Recent research has revealed a nearly unanimous answer to a question about the most important capability for leaders to develop: self-awareness. Self-awareness means being aware of the internal aspects of one's nature, such as personality traits, emotions, values, attitudes, and perceptions, and appreciating how your patterns affect other people. Most leadership experts agree that a primary characteristic of effective leaders is that they know who they are and what they stand for. When leaders deeply understand themselves, they remain grounded and constant so that people know what to expect from them. High achievers share a similar characteristic. When faced with obstacles and failures, they underwent a ruthless self-examination to challenge their beliefs, biases, and assumptions. A careful self-reflection is essential for most people to recognize their blind spots. We all have blind spots, things that we're not aware of or don't recognize as problems that limit our effectiveness and hinder career success. One particularly damaging blind spot is displaying an aggressive, confrontational style, otherwise known as being a jerk. Another blind spot that some leaders have is simply being too nice. Leaders who are constantly trying to please everyone can't lead. They often make poor decisions because they can't tolerate even mild degrees of conflict. It's critical for a leader to understand the importance of self-awareness and how to recognize those blind spots. Personality is the set of unseen characteristics and processes that underline a relatively stable pattern of behavior in response to ideas, objects, or people in the environment. Most people think of personality in terms of traits. Although researchers have examined thousands of traits over the years, their findings have been distilled into 5 general dimensions that describe personality. These are known as the Big 5 personality dimensions that describe an individual's extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. Each dimension contains a wide range of specific traits. For example, all of the personality traits that you would use to describe a teacher, friend, or boss could be categorized into one of the Big 5 dimensions. These factors represent a continuum, in that a person may have a low, moderate, or high degree of each of the dimensions. Extroversion is made up of traits and characteristics that influence behavior in group settings. Extroversion refers to the degree to which a person is outgoing, sociable, talkative, and comfortable meeting and talking to new people. Someone low on extroversion may come across as quiet, withdrawn, or socially unassertive. A person with a high degree of extroversion is often quite self-confident. They seek out positions of authority and are competitive and assertive. They like to be in charge of others and have responsibility for others. Agreeableness refers to the degree to which a person is able to get along with others and being good-natured, cooperative, forgiving, compassionate, understanding, and trusting. A leader who scores high on agreeableness seems warm and approachable, whereas one who's low on this dimension may seem cold, distant, or inassertive. Studies show that people who score high on agreeableness are more likely to get jobs and to keep them than less agreeable people are. The next personality dimension, conscientiousness, refers to the degree to which a person is responsible, dependable, persistent, and achievement-oriented. A conscientious person is focused on a few goals, which he or she pursues in a purposeful way, whereas a less conscientious person tends to be easily distracted and impulsive. The dimension of emotional stability refers to the degree to which a person is well-adjusted, calm, and secure. A leader who is emotionally stable handles stress well, is able to handle criticism, and generally doesn't take mistakes or failures personally. Leaders with emotional stability typically develop positive relationships and can also improve relationships among others. The final Big 5 dimension, openness to experience, is the degree to which a person has a broad range of interests and is imaginative, creative, and willing to consider new ideas. These people are intellectually curious and often seek out new experiences through travel, the arts, movies, reading widely, and other activities. People lower in this dimension tend to have narrower interests and stick to the true and tried ways of doing things. The value of the Big 5 for leaders is primarily to help them understand their own basic personality dimensions and then learn to emphasize the positive and mitigate the negative aspects of their own natural styles. By perception, we mean the process people use to make sense out of their surroundings by selecting, organizing, and interpreting information. Values and attitudes affect perceptions and vice versa. For example, a leader who greatly values ambition and career success may perceive a problem or a subordinate's mistake as an impediment to his or her own success, whereas a leader who values helpfulness and obedience might see it as a chance to help the subordinate improve or grow. Of particular concern for leaders are perceptual distortions, errors in perceptual judgment that arise from inaccuracies in perception. Some types of errors are so common that leaders should be familiar with them. These include stereotyping, halo effect, projection, and perceptual defense. Leaders who recognize these perceptual distortions can better adjust their perceptions to more closely match objective reality. Stereotyping is the tendency to assign an individual to a group or broad category, like female, black, elderly, or male, white, or disabled, and then attribute widely held generalizations about that group to the individual. Stereotyping prevents people from truly knowing those they classify in this way. In addition, negative stereotypes prevent talented people from advancing in an organization and fully contributing their talents to an organization's success. The halo effect occurs when the perceiver develops an overall impression of a person or situation based on one characteristic, either favorable or unfavorable. In other words, a halo blinds the perceiver to other characteristics that should be used in generating a more complete assessment. The halo effect can play a significant role in performance appraisal. For example, a person with an outstanding attendance record may be assessed as responsible, industrious, and highly productive. Another person with less than average attendance may be assessed as a poor performer. Projection is the tendency of perceivers to see their own personal traits in other people. That is, they project their own needs, feelings, values, and attitudes into the judgment of others. A leader who is achievement-oriented might assume that subordinates are as well. This might cause the manager to restructure jobs to be less routine and more challenging without regard for employee actual satisfaction. The best safeguards against errors based on projection are self-awareness and empathy. Perceptual defense is the tendency of perceivers to protect themselves against ideas, objects, or people that are threatening. People perceive things that are satisfying and pleasant, but tend to disregard things that are disturbing and unpleasant. In essence, people develop blind spots in the perceptual process so that negative sensory data do not hurt them. As people organize what they perceive, they often draw conclusions based on their perception. Attributions in leadership are judgments about what caused an event or behavior, something about a person, or something about a situation. For example, many people attribute the success or failure of an organization to the top leader, when in reality, there may be many factors that contribute to organizational performance. People also make attributions or judgments as a way to understand what caused their own or another person's behavior. An internal attribution says characteristics of the person led to the behavior, like my subordinate missed the deadline because he's lazy and incompetent. An external attribution says something about the situation caused the person's behavior, such as my subordinate missed the deadline because he didn't have the team support and resources that he needed. Attributions are important because they help people decide how to handle a situation. In the case of a subordinate missing a deadline, a leader who blames the mistake on the employee's personal characteristics might reprimand the person or, more effectively, provide additional training and direction. A leader who blames the mistake on an external factor will try to prevent such situations in the future, such as making sure team members have all the resources they need, providing support to remove obstacles, and ensuring that deadlines are realistic. People tend to have biases that they apply when making attributions. When evaluating others, many people underestimate the influence of external factors and overestimate the influence of internal factors. This tendency is called the fundamental attribution error. Another bias that distorts attributions involves attributions that we make about our own behavior. Leaders tend to overestimate the contribution of internal factors to their success and overestimate the contribution of external factors to their failures. This tendency, called the self-serving bias, means that people give themselves too much credit for what they do well and give external forces too much blame when they fail. Thus, if a leader's subordinates say she doesn't listen well enough, and the leader thinks subordinates don't communicate well enough, the truth may actually lie somewhere between. All in all, leaders must be able to explain attributions and recognize how perception affects the leader-follower relationship. The whole brain concept is an approach that considers not only a person's preference for right-brained versus left-brained thinking, but also conceptual versus experiential thinking, and identifies 4 quadrants of the brain related to different thinking styles. The whole brain approach considers not only a person's preference for right brain versus left brain thinking, but also for conceptual versus experiential thinking. The whole brain model identifies 4 quadrants of the brain that are related to different thinking styles. While not entirely physiologically accurate, the whole brain model is an excellent metaphor for understanding differences in thinking patterns. Some people strongly lean towards using one quadrant in most situations, whereas others rely on 2, 3, or even all 4 styles of thinking. So the whole brain model provides a useful overview of an individual's mental preferences, which in turn affects patterns of communication, behavior, and leadership. Quadrant A is associated with logical thinking, analysis of facts, and processing numbers. A person whose quadrant A dominance is rational and realistic, thinks critically, and likes to deal with numbers and technical matters. When a leader has predominantly A-quadrant thinking styles, he or she tends to be effective and authoritative. Quadrant B deals with planning, organization of facts, and careful detailed review. A person who relies heavily on Quadrant B thinking is well organized, reliable, and neat. This is the manager part of the brain. These people like to establish plans and procedures to get things done on time. Leaders with predominantly Quadrant B thinking styles are typically conservative and highly traditional. Quadrant C is associated with interpersonal relationships and affects initiative and emotional thought processes. C-quadrant individuals are sensitive to others and enjoy interacting with and teaching others. Hence, this might be considered the teacher part of the brain. These people are typically emotional and expressive, outgoing, and supportive of others. Leaders with predominantly Quadrant C style are friendly, trusting, and empathetic. And finally, Quadrant D is associated with conceptualizing, synthesizing, and integrating facts and patterns and seeing the big picture rather than the details. This is the artist part of the brain. A person with Quadrant D preference is visionary and imaginative, likes to speculate and break the rules, take risks, and may be impulsive. These people are curious and enjoy experimentation and playfulness. The Quadrant D leader is holistic, imaginative, and entrepreneurial. People can learn to use their whole brain rather than relying on 1 or 2 quadrants. Research indicates that very few, if any, individuals can be wholly balanced among the 4 quadrants, but people can be aware of their preferences and engage in activities and experiences that help them develop their other quadrants. Leaders who reach the top of organizations have well-balanced brains according to research. Understanding that individuals have different thinking styles can help leaders be more effective in interacting with others. Some leaders act as if everyone responds to the same material and behavior in the same way, but it simply isn't true. Leaders can shift their styles and behaviors to more effectively communicate with followers and help them perform to their full potential. The MBTI is an introspective, self-report questionnaire with the purpose of indicating differing psychological preferences in how people perceive the world around them and make decisions. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator instrument uses 4 different pairs of attributes to classify people into one of 16 different personality types. The introversion versus extroversion dimension focuses on where people gain interpersonal strength and mental energy. Extroverts gain energy from being around others and interacting with others, whereas introverts gain energy by focusing on personal thoughts and feelings. The sensing versus intuition dimension focus on how a person absorbs information. Those with a sensing preference gather and absorb information through the 5 senses, whereas intuitive people rely less on direct perceptions. The thinking versus feeling dimension relates to how much consideration a person gives to emotions in making a decision. Feeling types tend to rely more on their values and sense of what's right or wrong, and they consider how a decision will affect other people's feelings. Thinking types tend to rely more on logic and be very objective in decision making. The judging versus perceiving dimension concerns an individual's attitudes towards ambiguity and how quickly a person will make a decision. People with a judging preference like certainty and closure. They enjoy having goals and deadlines and tend to make decisions quickly based on available data. Perceiving people, on the other hand, enjoy ambiguity, dislike deadlines, and may change their mind several times before making a final decision. Perceiving types like to gather a large amount of data and information before making a decision. Individuals develop unique strengths and weaknesses as a result of their preference for introversion versus extroversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. Studies have confirmed that there's no leader type in all of the 16 MBTI types, and each can function effectively as leaders. Leaders can learn to use their preferences to balance their approaches and best suit followers in a situation. Based on some research, the two preferences that seem to be most strongly associated with successful leadership are thinking and judging. However, this doesn't mean that people with other preferences can't be effective leaders. Much more research needs to be done before any conclusions can be reached about the relationships between MBTI types and leadership. Leaders can learn to work more effectively with different personality types by following some simple guidelines. First, understand your own personality and how you react to others. Avoid judging people based on limited knowledge and realize that everyone has different facets to their personality. Learn to control your frustration and help keep different personality types focused on the goal and the tasks needed to reach it. Treat everyone with respect. People like to be accepted and appreciated for who they are. Even if you find someone's personality grating, remain professional and keep your irritation to yourself. Don't gossip or joke about other personality types. Acknowledge each person's strengths. Everyone wants to be recognized for their unique talents, so be sure to acknowledge and make the use of people's useful personality characteristics. Always strive for understanding. A good approach to take with a personality type widely different from yours is to clarify questions every time there's a potential for miscommunication. Follow up each question or request with a statement explaining why you've asked and how it will benefit the organization as well as the individual. And finally, remember that everyone wants to fit in. No matter their personalities, people typically take on behavior patterns that are the norm for the environment. Leaders can create norms and keep everyone focused on positive interactions and high performance. In addition, being aware of your own MBTI type enables leaders to maximize their strengths and minimize their weaknesses. Leaders should remember that each type can have a positive and negative consequence for behavior.